Hello and welcome to this very first episode of Learning Live with HID Academy, or to give it a proper title, Learning Live at HID Academy. My name is Rob Puricelli. I'm an instructional designer, been with the Academy for about a dozen years now, and I'm going to be hosting this event for the next half hour, and I'm going to be joined by my esteemed and learned friend, a long-time colleague of mine, Mr. Paul Hines. Good afternoon, good morning, should I say.
Good
to
afternoon, Rob. Thank
How
you
are
very
you?
much for having me here. I'm doing well.
Good.
I'm very excited. This is our first episode. I'm hoping this really takes off and we get to do a lot of them.
Absolutely.
So as Rob alluded, my name is Paul Hines. I'm a technical trainer with HID Academy. I've been with the company going on 19 years, and I've been with the Academy itself going on 16 years. So it has been a long tenure, and I've seen a lot of our different products and taught on a lot of them as well. And I'm excited to talk about HID Approved today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool stuff. Well, as
for introductions, that pretty much does it.
I think so. As Paul mentioned, we're going to be talking about HID Approve and what it is, how it works. Obviously, we've only got 30 minutes to discuss this, and we obviously want your questions as well. So we're going to be looking at it from a fairly high level, giving you an idea of what the concepts are, how it works, what it does. And if you have any questions during the show at all, please do put them into the YouTube chat window. We've got our team waiting to take your questions and pass them over to us. We will then try and answer those during the show. If you could do us a favor, though, first of all, put a big capital Q in front of your question, just so it stands out from any other comments that might fly past in the chat window. That would be really super useful. And before we do anything else, we'd really appreciate it if you like this video, of course, if you liked it. And if you want to be notified of subsequent videos, of which we hope there are going to be many, subscribe to the HID Academy YouTube channel and hit that bell for notifications. And if you think there's anybody out there that might benefit from these live streams and watching them, during or after the fact, then please do feel free to share our channel link amongst your friends and colleagues and get the message out there, so to speak. So that's pretty much it for the introductions and the housekeeping. So we're going to try and keep this, say, to 30 minutes, and we're going to talk about HID Approved, what it is and what it does. So I'm going to hand over to Paul, who's just going to kind of give us a brief overview to start with.
Yeah, we can start with a brief overview. So I do tend to ramble. I'm going to trust Rob to keep me on track today. HID Approve is a way of enabling two-factor authentication for either consumer authentication or workforce authentication, whether you're talking about people trying to get onto their VPN, or people trying to access their bank account, or even something more mundane, like getting onto your Facebook account or getting onto Amazon or whatever it happens to be. It's the credential becomes your phone, basically, is what happens. I think people are very used to the idea of being assigned a card when they join a company that opens doors, maybe logs you into your computer. So this is kind of taking your mobile device that you already have anyway and adding a form of two-factor authentication to that. What really sets HID Approve apart is it's got a really low cost of ownership, because the app is available for iOS, for Android, for Mac OS, for Windows, and it's just available. You just go to the App Store and you can download it. It is really, really good security with, like I said, kind of like this seamless user experience. To the user, it's here. I'm better when I draw things. So let's share screens for a second here, and I'll kind of work through what HID Approve is, with a little bit of drawing. We'll say. So you have your user over here, and that user is going to have a mobile device already, right? And so what we want for the user, one of the pain points that people often have is that whenever you add security to something, you by necessity kind of take away convenience, right? So username and password, very convenient. People are very used to it. We've been doing it their whole lives, right? Everything that you log into has a username and password. And so if we're asking you to add another factor of authentication, just by necessity, it's going to become more complicated. So what we want to do is we want to make this as frictionless as possible, right? So to the user, they're going to ask to authenticate to something. And then, so that's a user interaction. I'm just going to put a UI here. And then something's going to happen. And then they're going to swipe on their phone, right? So that's another UI. And what's happening in the background is something that we call out-of-band communication, but it's a little more complicated than that. Out-of-band communication, you're probably familiar with already. That's like if I want to change my password on Facebook, Facebook sends me an email with a code, and then I have to take that code out of my email and put it back in on the site. So because Facebook's trusting that I own my email address, they're using that as an out-of-band option to send me this code. So HID Approve's doing almost the same thing, except that we have your user, right? You can tell I'm an artist by trade. So, HID is really stifling me down into a trainer role, but art is where I shine. So you have your user. They've already got their mobile device, and they're going to send a request to log on to something. Maybe this is a VPN. Maybe it's logging into your bank. Whatever it is, they're sending that request to an authentication platform. So this authentication platform is making decisions about who is or isn't allowed to gain access to a resource. When you bring HID Approve into this, what happens is that authentication platform sends the request out to the cloud to something called a push notification broker. And this is a service that's running in the cloud. It's something that you would set up on the authentication platform side. That's going to send a message down to the mobile device to say, hey, this user's trying to gain access to it. This registered device is the second factor of authentication. And they're going to get a little pop-up on their screen that says, this user's trying to gain access to this. Do you approve or disapprove? And it's either a swipe to the right to approve or a swipe to the left to say, no, this wasn't me making this request. That then gets sent out of band over to the authentication platform to say, the user, put in their username and password, and they've also swiped approve on their device. They've done their two factors of authentication. Mm-hmm. And you'll hear two-factor authentication a lot when you're talking about identity and access management, or sometimes it's referred to as IAMS. Identity and access management is just the processes that are put in place to verify someone's identity and then also allow them access to different resources. So if you ever see IAMS or identity and access management, it's talking about kind of holistically that whole ecosystem of solutions that enables that.
Sure. So let's have a quick look at a brief video that kind of explains and demonstrates HID Approve in use, and then we'll look a little bit more closely at using it and what sits behind the whole thing.
As more employees are accessing sensitive corporate data and resources remotely, it's crucial to ensure that sensitive data is protected and that both employee and business aren't exposed to any malicious threats. Costly breaches, often the result of human error, can lead to damaged reputations, regulatory fines, and even job loss. HID Approve allows your employees to use something that's always with them, their mobile device, to deliver secure authentication and transaction verification. It's a simple user experience for them and better security for your business. These days, a lot of work is done outside of the office. So when an employee wants to access corporate data over the VPN, HID Approve can provide convenient multi-factor authentication. Once they've requested access, a push notification is sent to the registered mobile device to verify it's really them. With a simple yet purposeful swipe, you have multi-factor authentication. And if the same employee needs to update customer or personal data, HID Approve sends a push notification asking the employee to verify, so you can ensure the person making the update is who they say they are. And you have an audit trail of all changes. HID Approve even works with no network coverage, generating a one-time password token in place of a push notification. So go ahead. Register multiple phones and tablets across multiple mobile platforms. HID Approve offers greater flexibility and convenience for employees and unparalleled security for corporations. And that's something everyone can approve of. To find out more about HID Approve, visit hidglobal.com/IAM.
So there we go. That's a kind of neat little package, kind of giving you an overview and demonstration of HID Approve in action, which kind of just backs up what Paul was talking about there. So I think really what we want to talk about next is the authentication. Get my tongue in gear here. Authentication platform in a bit more detail in terms of the customer-facing authentication and what goes on in the back end, and this thing about the 3 core pillars of consumer authentication. Do you want to sort of go into a little bit of detail about that, please?
Yeah, I definitely will. Like Rob alluded to, we kind of look at consumer authentication especially, but workforce authentication as well, as having kind of these 3 core pillars, right? There's identity verification, which is whatever processes are in place to determine that someone is the authentic user that they say they are. And then there's like a risk management portion. And then on top of that, there's the authentication platform that's actually making the decisions about who is or isn't allowed. So when we're looking at HID Approve, and I'll pop this back up on the stage. Here we go. So when we're looking at HID Approve is the customer-facing part of the authentication platform. So the authentication platform is kind of broken down into these 2 sides, right? So we have the customer-facing authentication, and this is where HID Approve sits, right? So this is customer-facing, and then on the other side is your authentication backend, and I'll just put BE here. So we've got kind of these 2 different sides. Customer-facing is where HID Approve sits, but it could be where a lot of other things sit as well. It could be biometrics for accessing something on the authentication side. It could be a FIDO pass key or a security key, some other type of out-of-band communication similar to HID Approve, like what I talked about with the Facebook example, changing your password. It could be mobile tokens, soft tokens that are installed on your web browser. There's a lot of different possibilities here on the customer-facing side. But the point of the authentication backend is that it's kind of invisible to the user. There's a lot of different things going on, or there could be a lot of different things. Obviously, this is going to be dependent on each different deployment. But it's kind of, again, going to be broken down into 2 parts. One is that risk management. And risk management, maybe if I could spell, risk management is things like behavioral intelligence and fraud prevention, threat detection. You might have seen, especially it happens a lot in the banking world, if I'm trying to access my bank account, I can log in with a username and password. That's all my bank account requires for me to log in on my mobile device. But if I want to do a wire transfer that's over a certain amount, suddenly my username and password isn't good enough anymore, right? And that's kind of like a step-up authentication, and that's taken from this risk management portion of the authentication platform. So that's things like behavioral intelligence, like if I'm logging into my bank account from a country that I don't normally log into my bank account from, ideally, that should kind of ping something on the authentication backend saying, hey, there's this unusual behavior. And that's all part of risk management. And HID has an entire risk management solution that we won't go into in detail here today because we just don't have time. But I mean, it covers all kinds of things from, where you are. So like geolocation, step-up authentication, like I talked about, like maybe if you're trying to do something that's a little more of a secure transaction, it might ask you to use a fingerprint or facial recognition or something like that, or more factors of authentication. What web browser you're using even could be a factor, right? If I'm always using Chrome and suddenly I'm trying to log into it from some other browser like Safari or something, is Safari still a thing? I think Safari's still a thing. Still is. I don't use Mac very much.
This is a bit like, because I remember some years ago, if you made an unusual transaction, the system would actually decline your card, and you might have to go through a whole process of phoning somebody up because they'd noticed unusual behavior. Nowadays, this can all be done, remotely in the cloud, applications running in the background, monitoring this stuff.
Yeah, and similar, like on one of my very first work trips, I didn't know much about the world. I had been out of so I live in Canada, and I had been out of Canada I think twice to go to Disney World before my first work trip, and then I went to Hong Kong. And I got there and I went to pay for my hotel. I didn't have a company card yet. I had to put it on mine and expense it later. And it got declined. And then my card was locked. And I had to call the company and explain where I was and give them a bunch of information. And then they unlocked my card. I was able to pay. But as a first time traveler, it was really frustrating and a little scary. We're kind of doing the same thing here, except, it's in the cloud now, right?
Yeah,
so it can say, hey, this guy's in the wrong place, but instead of locking his card, I can send a ping to his mobile device and he can just swipe to approve it, right?
Yeah.
And that gives me that extra confidence that they are who they say they are.
Yeah.
So it's kind of exactly that. The other part of the authentication backend is going to be either your in the cloud or on-premise authentication solution, right? So at HID, HID has the authentication service. We also have authentication server. And then we also have the authentication appliance, right, as a physical appliance, although you can do a virtual appliance as well. So we have these solutions in place that will make that decision about authentication, about who's allowed to access resources. And that's where you kind of set things up on the back end. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So did you want to give us a little demonstration of it actually working live? Is that something you feel brave
I can
enough
do
to?
that. I'm brave enough to. I will attempt not to give out all my information here. Let me really quickly just share my phone on the screen as well. Screen mirroring should pop up there in just a second. There we go. All right, so we've got my phone here, and I've got the HID Approve app is already on my phone. So if I try and log into my VPN, I have a couple of different choices. You won't see my VPN logging on here. I don't need you knowing my username or seeing how long my password is. So I won't share that on the screen. But if I go on my computer here and I say connect to my VPN, and I put in my ridiculously long password, okay, and then I have the choice of either putting in a one-time password or I can use a keyword. And the keyword will tell it to push to my device. And as long as I put in my password correctly, I should, in my HID Approve app, get I got login failed. So I did not put in my password correctly. Let's try that again. Maybe I should have shortened my password for this. Yeah, this is the problem with doing this live. But yeah, maybe I should have shortened my password before doing this. I think my password is like 28 characters long.
Wow, that's secure.
And it might have me currently on a timeout, but we'll see. When we did this in practice, worked so beautifully because I didn't get my password wrong. But yeah, right now my VPN is locking me out. So no, I'm not going to show it right now. Maybe we'll do the demo closer to the end. But do you have any questions I can answer while I wait for this?
Well, I was just going to say, what happens if you don't have access to the internet on your mobile device for whatever reason that might be? You might be out of coverage. You might not be able to connect to the Wi-Fi. How does that work? How does HID Approve work when you don't have a connection?
So yeah, if you don't have a connection, and so because you guys don't know my username or what I'm trying to log into here, I can actually show this time. Then you just click on the screen and it will generate a secure code, right? And this is a one-time password. It's available for 60 seconds. I'm not super worried about someone trying to log into my currently locked out VPN in the next 60 seconds. And it just gives you a secure code, right? So if you don't have mobile access, now this is using a time-based OTP. So basically the token on my phone is synchronized with the server. So they don't actually need to communicate. My phone will create this, and then the server will be able to take this and say, okay, that matches up with what it should be based on when this thing was enrolled and what have you. And again, we won't go too far into into OTP on this call. But if you want to learn more, definitely I would suggest going and go onto our training website, right? Go to hidglobal.com/training and sign up for an account. Once you have your account, we have training that goes more in depth on the back end, the workflows in the background that are going on with HID Approve. We have training on basic PKI, on one-time passwords, on all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's a really good series of fundamental courses on there that really gives you the basics of how the standards and technologies work, and then we apply those to our products and solutions.
Yeah, it looks like my VPN is going to let me try again. So let's see here. I'm going to type my password slower.
We got time. This is fine. We got time.
I just messed it up again. Okay. Yeah. This part and that. All right. Let's see if this works. It hasn't told me login failed yet, so
well, that's good.
There's a possibility. Yeah. There's something going on.
There we go. No.
What if I click out of this?
Yeah. There it is.
There it is. Oh, it's because I don't have notifications. This is my fault. Yeah, I currently have my phone, so it's logging me into my VPN now. You saw there, I got the little swipe. But I currently have my phone on Do Not Disturb mode, so it's blocking that communication. I have to actually open the app to get it to happen.
There we go. Every day's a skill day. Yeah, we've
every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what's going on.
Yeah. So it's a completely kind of frictionless thing. It's so simple because as far as the user is concerned, there's nothing more to understand than when you log on to something, your app will ask you to approve or decline it, and you just do the familiar swipe right or swipe left. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't got a connection, you just tap and you get a one-time password. So it really is a very for the end user, it's an incredibly simple, frictionless service.
As long as your phone isn't on Do Not Disturb. But even if it is, so like you saw, my phone is on Do Not Disturb, but I was able to still open the app if I know I'm logging on and I know it's going to be sending me the push notification. If I open the app, it will still let me swipe.
Yeah.
But for other things like we were talking about, where your bank wants to step up authentication and it's going to send you a push notification, you're going to want to just not have your phone on Do Not Disturb.
So what sort of things does HID Approve guard against? What are the benefits of, what are the pain points that this solves?
Yeah, so I mean, two-factor authentication in general guards against a lot of different pain points. One of the big ones is that passwords are just kind of famously insecure. And one of the big things that we see all the time is phishing, which is a form of social engineering where people will send you something that looks authentic, right? It might say, I don't think a day goes by that I don't get a text on my phone saying like, oh, your UPS delivery is caught in, customs, click here to do whatever. And you click the link and you get to a website that looks exactly like UPS's website, and you put in your UPS login information and then they have it, right? But that login information is just a username and password. So if you're requiring another factor of authentication, you're using something like HID Approve, that username and password is not enough or should not be enough to gain you access to the resources that those, the people are after, right? Whoever these malicious individuals are. So that comes up a lot in mobile banking, right? Especially, like I said at the beginning of this, I can log into my bank with just username and password. And I think we've all gotten the pop-up that says, hey, do you want to enable two-factor authentication? And, for bank, you absolutely should. For anything secure, you absolutely should. I know, even working in the authentication workspace, I've, for some of the smaller things like like Facebook. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I just wanted to remember who. Yeah, I just wanted to remember who I am.
Yeah.
But in a business environment, in a banking environment, or a consumer environment, these things are really important because a lot of times the data that you're protecting isn't just your own, right?
Yeah.
It's not just your aunt's, baking recipes on Facebook. It's more important stuff.
Absolutely. I turn it on for everything now.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything.
For YouTube, for Twitch, for pretty much everything it's on.
Yeah.
Even a lot of video games. If people play World of Warcraft, that requires two-factor authentication now because it's
and apps like HID approved make two-factor authentication just so much easier than getting an email with a passcode that you then have to go and copy and paste or whatever. It's just simply open the app or respond to the notification and boom, that's it. You're in. What kind of customization features exist for HID approved? Because I imagine there might be customers out there that want to customize it for their purposes.
Yeah, that's a big thing. So in that video that we showed earlier, when it was kind of flashing all of the phones across the screen and it was showing a lot of different kind of looks and feels for HID approve. You can change that logo that's on the screen. The default HID approve logo can be your company logo. The pop-up that comes up can have your company logo and your customized message that says, whatever it is that you needed to say. And then the coloring, branding, all of that is customizable as well. On our website, hidglobal.com, if you go to the document library, I think there's a really good paper that goes through kind of all of the different customization capabilities. Cool. And there's a lot of them.
Excellent stuff. And what actual products do we have and solutions do we have that enable consumer authentication solutions?
Just in general. So we talked about those three pillars of consumer authentication and workforce authentication. And there's that identity verification, there's risk management, and then there's the authentication platform side of it. So HID has an entire Active ID suite of products for identity authentication and lifecycle management. So this would be things like like CMS, the credential management system for managing your credentials that you've issued to your workforce. Things like the authentication server and the authentication appliance that I mentioned earlier. For more advanced multi-factor authentication, we also have products like Digital Persona. And then obviously HID Approve if you want a really seamless mobile solution for authentication and transaction signing and things like that. For identity verification, it's really easy to find because it's literally called the Identity Verification Service. It's a product by HID. It's a really powerful AI-driven identity verification solution. We also have the HID risk management solution for threat and fraud prevention. And of course, if we move outside of HID approved, we have our Crescendo credentials. So they're all industry compliant, compatible with FIDO, multi-factor authentication cards and tokens. Tons of different products to fit the exact solution that works for you.
Absolutely. If you want to learn more about that kind of stuff, then go to our website, hidglobal.com, and you can drop down the solutions tab and choose multi-factor authentication, or there is the address for you right there on the screen. But go to hidglobal.com. It's been completely redesigned and become very, very user-friendly, so you should be able to find that stuff very quickly. Paul, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you ever so much for your time today and for all of that useful information. We're going to be back next time, and we're going to kind of go one step further and actually talk about identity verification. If you want to get that live stream and watch it live or catch up later, then make sure that you do give us a subscribe on our YouTube channel. Just click that subscribe button and then hit the notification bell, and you'll get a timely reminder when the show is scheduled and when we're going to go live. So you get like a half-hour warning, so you can grab some coffee and some cookies and sit down and sit with us for 30 minutes and learn some stuff, which is great. I hope you've enjoyed this first in the series of Learning Live HID Academy. Paul, once again, thank you ever so much for your time.
Yep, thank you for having me. I wish I had known we were allowed to have coffee and cookies, but maybe next time.
Indeed. If you want to get in touch with us at the Academy, please do. If you have any questions that you think of after the show has ended, then you can always email us, training@hidglobal.com. Put your question into an email and send it off to us, and we'll endeavour to get back to you as soon as possible. And of course, don't forget to sign up for an account at the HID Academy Learning Centre. Just go to hidglobal.com/training and put in your details. We'll approve that as quickly as we can, and then you've got access to a huge amount of online learning content, from e-learning modules to YouTube videos and so on and so forth. And of course, the YouTube channel right here has a whole bunch of stuff for all sorts of HID products and solutions, from packs to identity and access management and secure issuance and way more besides. So thanks ever so much, Paul. Again, thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this, and we hope to see you on the next one, which is about identity verification. Subscribe to us to get the notifications, and we'll see you all next time. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.